I wasn't really planning on doing a book chat about this stack because there's no like theme to it or anything. It was just all of the random books that kept building up on my dresser as read these next. But you know what? Why not? Why not? We love a random book chat. And by we, I mean a select few of you, but welcome, enjoy. Everyone else, it's okay. You don't have to stay. Hi, baby. Do you want to sit with me? Come here. Oh, yay, visitors. So this is everything that I've read since the last time I talked about everything I read, which I don't remember how long ago that was. It doesn't really matter. Floppy hands. And yeah, like I said, I wasn't really planning to do a video chat on them, so I didn't like write down my thoughts or anything as I went. I'm sure I had thoughts, and we're about to find out if I remember any of them. I kind of want to flip this though, because this is the most recent thing I read, and I want to start with the earliest, furthest away. First thing I read. Let's do it the slow and careful way. I said slow and careful. As I go, I'll also do my book rating, which is just, being very dangerous here. It's just a simple yes or no. Do I think the book is worth time or do I not? Which even that is like, you know, so based on me. Do I think it's worth my time? Do I think it was worth my time? Because at this point, I've already read it. Can't take it back now. There's a nice mix in here. There's some plays, there's new books, and there's classics. Starting from the top, If We Were Villains, which is a book I picked up on my road trip last year. I think from the very first bookstore that I went to, just because I was like, I'm gonna buy some random books based on if I like their covers. I wish I liked this more than I did. I wanted to like it. The thing is, it felt very much like someone who really, really, really loves Shakespeare, but has no actual experience with like theater education, wrote this, which like maybe based on the author's bio might be true. And as somebody who does have theater education, I was just, there were so many parts that I was like, what? Granted, this is about like kids at some sort of elite theater conservatory sort of thing. But first of all, the author does that thing that I kind of hate in everything, where it's like, this is a school that has multiple programs, a theater program, a music program, like tons of students here learning all different things, but like it kind of feels like everyone else at the school doesn't even exist, except when it's convenient to the theater students. It always feels unrealistic to me. I'm like, no matter how like close-knit of a group you claim your little group of protagonists or main characters are, I'm always like, really? They don't know a single other person at their school who's getting a degree in any other field. And then it's like when they get to their theater productions, there's suddenly just like this group of costume design students who magically make things happen exactly how they want them and beautifully. And I'm like, that's a really collaborative process, and doing costume design for a show is a lot of work, and there's not even usually costume design degrees at the same level as this. Like usually it's a master's degree is when you finally can get into costume design. Not always. I don't know. It was just a bunch of little things like that I was like, this doesn't feel like the author did enough research on what it's like to be a theater student. And I think if I had not personally been a theater student, maybe none of it would have stood out to me and I would have just been like, okay, great story. But like, because I had the experience that I have reading the whole thing, I was just like, what is happening here? There was a distinct one that was just so random, but like, this isn't really a spoiler because you find out right at the beginning, somebody died. like, it's pretty easy to tell from the cover. Somebody died. And there's this point in the book where they're doing a very creative version of a Shakespeare play. And a character is supposed to get covered in blood. And the author keeps, like, reiterating and keeps hounding on this thing of, like, how much the fake blood stank and how much it smelled like raw meat and everything. And I'm reading it going like, oh crap, are they gonna find out that, like, this was somebody's real blood? Like, is that how ewy we're getting in this story? Because fake blood for the theater does not smell like raw meat because it's not blood. Fake blood does have a really strong smell, but it's like a maple syrup kind of smell because it's typically made out of table syrup or corn syrup, because you need something that's kind of has a viscosity to it and is sticky, and it isn't going to just evaporate. Like, you can't make fake blood out of water because it wouldn't go on the skin properly. It would evaporate immediately. So it's usually, and I'm talking like professionally, this is like from film sets and stuff, theater sets, everything, you make fake blood out of like a corn syrup. And the smell is quite overwhelming, but it's not disgusting in the way that she was writing it. And she specifically said at one point it smelled like raw meat. And I'm like, that's just what were they making their fake blood out of if it smells like raw meat? And it was just little things like that that kept taking me out of the story, because then I was like, with the knowledge that I have, I kept being like, what is this about to turn into? Like, this has to be some deeper thing. And no, it was nothing. It was literally nothing. I don't even really know why she was focusing on it so much, because, like, getting covered in fake blood is pretty par for the course as a theater major. Anyway, it was little stuff like that all throughout. I think the story itself was good. It was fine, but, like, I don't know, the way it was written just kind of ruined it for me, because there were just so many points that I was like, that doesn't make sense. That's not how it would be. So unfortunately, in my rating, this one is a no for me. Sorry, she had a good idea. Balm in Gilead and Other Plays by Lanford Wilson. It's plays. It's classic plays. Yeah. We're probably not going to really discuss the plays. It's fine. Let's move on to one that I could discuss for a while. Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Y'all, this book is so good that I find it difficult to put into words why it's so good. First of all, this is a great example of a book that if you had told me more of what it was about, I probably wouldn't have read it. And this is, sorry, choking on something, air probably. This is why I said before that I don't want a synopsis of the book before I read it. I want to go in totally blind, and it's because I have prejudices and I have biases and I have things that I think I will like and things that I think I won't like. So if you had given me a description of what this book was about, I probably would have been like, that's not really for me. I'm not really into that kind of thing. But instead, I went in knowing nothing, except that it was like a modern retelling or some sort of play on Charles Dickens' David Copperfield, which I totally thought I had read. I went into this being like, oh, you'll kind of know what's gonna happen in the story, basically, because, like, you know David Copperfield, you've read that. And then the longer I read this, the more I was like, I don't think I have read David Copperfield. I think I just saw the movie, the more recent one that had Tilda Swinton in it, and I'm pretty sure I watched it on a plane, so kind of all that I remember from that movie is Tilda Swinton and the donkeys. Anyway, so I went in pretty blind, and I'm glad that I did. This book was so easy to read, which is a weird way to put it. It's pretty chunky. I think it maybe can look intimidating for some people. But, like, there's this thing when you start reading a book. It's not about the story. This is not about the story at all. The story is incredible. It was educational. It was empathy building. It was just straight up good, Great story. But this is about the writing style. With a lot of books, when I start reading them, it takes anywhere from like 1 page to the first whole chapter for me to like get into the author's writing style. There are just, you know, a little bit of time at the beginning. There are a few pages at the beginning where you're kind of having to go back and reread some sentences and slow down and be like, oh, how did they word that? At least for me. I shouldn't say you. This might not be a thing for you. And generally, this is kind of how I tell how good of a writer the author is, at least in my opinion. If I can like get into their writing style within the first few pages or at least the first chapter, then it's like, that's pretty good writing. If it takes like up to 3 chapters for me to get into it, I'm like, okay. If it takes more than 3 chapters and I'm still like stumbling over their writing and having to like reread things and go like, wait, how is that sentence worded? To me, that's like, this is not a super great writer. The story might still be great, but this is not like a writing style that flows with my brain for whatever reason. This one, there was just none of that. From the very start, there was never even the slightest bit of struggle. I started reading and it was like, voomp, you're in, you are flowing, you are just going through this. So I read this, I don't remember how fast, but like I read this so fast for how thick it is, because the story was enthralling, which meant I wanted to read it every night. I don't think I ever read it not at night. My main reading time is before bed, and it's very rare that I like sit down in the middle of the day to read a book. I have to really love it, which so far has only happened, I think, with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But yeah, even with just reading it at night, I blazed through this, and it's because it wasn't difficult to read it all. And again, I'm not talking about the story. The story does have some I don't know, adult material. It's always weird to be like, oh, it has some like grown-up stuff in it or like some hard material. I don't know. Like for the people in the story, that's just their life. But yeah, like the highest praise I can give this book is that it was so easy to read. And I don't think that's the way people would normally praise a book like this. But God, her writing is just incredible. You go in the back and it's this lovely woman who, you know, is older, and she's writing a story from the perspective of a male who is never older than like, I kind of forget, but he's probably like 25 by the end of the story. And it's just, it's so in his voice. It so encapsulates this character's voice. I also love like when first person books, it doesn't have to be like this every time, but I do really like it when first person books acknowledge the first personness of it. You know, if the book is written as the protagonist is the narrator, I really enjoy it when there's a reason the protagonist is the narrator. And in this one, it's at the very end, which isn't really much of a spoiler, but, you know, he does acknowledge at the very end that he is telling you this story and why he is telling you this story. Actually, he acknowledges throughout the book that he's telling you the story, but he adds that acknowledgement at the end of why he's telling you this story. And I really love that in first-person books. I love when they're like in letter form and journal form, or when they're just like, hey, I am telling you a story. I, the character, am telling you a story, and here's why. There's a reason why I'm telling you this story. And like, it's fine if it doesn't have that. Not every first-person book has that. A lot of them don't. And it's like fine if it doesn't, but I really like it when it does. I like the acknowledgement of why I am hearing directly from the character. Anyway, I could probably keep talking about this book for ages, but we will move on. I'll tell you this, I had trouble moving on after this book. The next, like, a lot of the next books that I've read, we'll get into them, they were good and stuff, but like this one was so good that I kept reading the next ones and just being like a little bit bored by them in comparison. So, read this one, it'll ruin you. for the next books. The House on Mango Street. It was really enthralling. It was really fast to read because it's just all these little bits put together, so you can read just like one of them if you have a second. The writing was great. The different stories, like some of them were lighthearted and fun, and then some of them were really deeper and meaningful. And yeah, highly recommend. This is a classic, I think. Is it a classic by my definition of 50 years ago? Do we care? No. 1984. It's a classic. Highly recommend giving that one a read. Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. I really enjoy Edith Wharton's writing, so I'm kind of always just keeping an eye out for books from her so that I can read more of her writing. She is really good at the twist ending. Loves a little surprise on the end. She and O. Henry should have been friends. I don't know if they were alive at the same time. They both like twist endings. Honestly, this was not like a standout one of hers for me. It was fine. Okay. Moving on, I guess. Catch-22. I've been meaning to read this one for ages, so now I have. Oh, I didn't give ratings to any of these. I don't rate plays, so that doesn't matter. But, yes, no to Ethan Frome. I'm getting pickier. Back to Catch-22. Yes, we'll just get that out of the way. This one was so interesting. The way that it's told really reflects the situation well, I guess. Like, it's kind of non-linear, but it's more non-linear at the beginning, and it becomes more linear as you go on. So at first, it's a little confusing, and you just have to, I was trying at first to like be like, wait, what order is this happening in? Because the guy's just kind of telling you all of these things, and then like each thing kind of references other things, and so you start to realize he's telling you these things out of order. But as the story goes on, you get more and more in order, and the story also becomes more and more difficult not to read. The writing style I thought was really good and I enjoyed. It becomes more and more, I should say, less and less comedic. It's pretty funny at the beginning, and it's very much like starting out by like mocking war and the military, particularly the American military. It's very much like in a comedic light, a satiric light of like, this is dumb. Look at how dumb all of this is. But as the story goes on, the stakes start going up, I suppose. It starts being more and more like, this is dumb, and it's less like, ha ha, this is dumb now, and it's more like, oh, crap. And then you get to a certain point, I mean, slight spoiler, but like, this is kind of well known about the book, is just kind of like, characters are just dying one after another throughout the entire book, and that ramps up as you get towards the end, as we become more linear and as we become less comedic. And there's a certain point where there's a couple characters' deaths that are just, it's kind of the turning point of the book where you're suddenly like, oh, this is not funny anymore. And it's like, this is how it's supposed to be. This is the genius of this book, I suppose, is it's supposed to be like this. You're supposed to start reading it, I'm guessing at least. This feels very on purpose without me like having taken a class on Catch-22 or something. But like, you're lured in at the beginning with this whole like, haha, stupid army stuff. Isn't this great? Army? I think they're in the Air Force. And you're lured in by like the comedy of it and the funny writing style and like, hijinks. Look at all the hijinks. And then you're in it, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, nope, these are real people, not, it's characters in a book, but like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, there are consequences. This isn't just like funny hijinks anymore. This is lives that are being lost. It's interesting to me how many books there are that are just like, hey, y'all, war is dumb, but in a really tragic way. We should stop that. And we all read the books and go, yep, we completely agree. Look at how dumb it is. And nobody stops that. Anyway, from there, The Berry Pickers. This was recommended to me, and I purchased it at a bookstore in Chicago while I was on my road trip. I'm finding it hard to, like, have thoughts on this one other than like it was really good. It's very good. I think it was better in story than in writing style, but the writing style was not distracting at all, and the story was very, very good. It was, again, educational and empathy building, and one of those things that you're like, oh crap, this is fiction, but like this stuff happened. Yeah, I think like I don't really have more thoughts on it because it's not a story that I need to have more thoughts on. It's a story I needed to read and intake and learn from, and I did that. It's a yes. I got this at a bookstore in Wales, The Coming of the Fairies by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It's like his whole thing about the, I'm gonna pronounce it wrong, the Cottingley fairy thing, hoax, and like he fully believed it. It's a whole thing. Kazro has a great video on it, but it was really funny reading the book and being like, oh, this is the guy who wrote Sherlock Holmes, who is sitting here going like, yes, fairies are entirely real and there's such good proof, and I'm like, oh goodness gracious. It was kind of funny to read. It's not fiction, so I'm not going to give it a rating because that's not what I do to nonfiction. So these next two, there was a bookstore here in LA that I went to with my stepmom and sister when they were visiting, and they had a little shelf that was translated books. So I got these two because, dramatic pause, someone mentioned in the comments, I think on my last book video, that like a good challenge to do that I think they were doing is like reading around the world, specifically trying to read a book from every single country in the world. And I was like, that is a fabulous idea. I'm stealing it. I'm doing it immediately. So this is happening. I am trying a reading around the world challenge, but it's like a very background, just, it's going to be happening for years and years in the background. But I made myself a list of all of the countries. There's more countries than I thought there were. And then I went through and put down all of the books that I could remember or that I had read recently that like counted for certain countries. Like, obviously the United States is good. Obviously, like, Great Britain, I'm good. Now I'm just kind of actively looking all the time to get some books that are by authors from other countries. But I want your opinion before we get into these, because I wasn't sure about this, and I like rules, and I like everything to make sense, and I was like, wait, how should this work? In theory, in generality, you're just like, I'm reading a book from every country in the world. But is it that the author is from that country, or is it that the book was originally written in that language, or is it that the book takes place in that country? Or does it need to be like some combo or all three of those things? Because like, what's a good example? I Who Have Never Known Men was originally written in French. And so I was like, oh, that's the French book. It takes place in like a dystopian future. You don't know where it is. So it doesn't necessarily take place in France, but I was like, yeah, it was written in French. That counts as the French book. Looked up the author really fast to be like, was she actually French? No, she was from Belgium. So should that be the French book? Should that be the Belgium book? What are people from Belgium called? My brain is wanting to do Welsh, so like Belsh. How do I not know this? I really don't know. I'm not going to look it up at the moment. You can tell me in the comments. But should I Who Have Never Known Men count as the French entry, or should it count as the Belgium entry, or should it like not count as any of them? This is my question. Give me your opinions, because I'm not sure how to do this. There's a lot of books that are like this. There's another one coming up here that is written, it was originally written in Italian, but the entire book takes place in Japan. And so I'm like, should that count as the Italian entry? Or like, do I have to get pickier about things? I don't know. Give me your thoughts, because I'm like, how should I do this? How shall I do it? So, because I have that undergoing challenge going on, I specifically went straight to that translated shelf and was like, let me get two that will fall into that challenge. and that I will know nothing about. And so I got these two. This one is We Are Green and Trembling by Gabriella Cabezon Camera? I'm going to be bad at pronouncing things. And then the other one is Journey to the Edge of Life by Tezer Özlü. So this author is Turkish, and this one is Argentinian. And this one, technically, Journey to the Edge of Life, it's not really fiction. It's actually about the author's actual, like a period of the author's life. It's about like a journey she made and the thoughts and everything she had along the way. It was really fascinating. It was kind of very I just lost the word, stream of consciousness. It's a bit of a stream of consciousness. She's writing her thoughts, but also like blending it with her actions. And so it's very like mushy how it goes. It's not like a clean narrative. It's not just like an essay or something. Very fascinating. I really enjoyed it, and I would give that one a yes. We Are Green and Trembling was very interesting. It like jumped back and forth between a couple perspectives and between like two different time frames, and so you were a little confused at first about what was happening, especially because of the way that it's written. It's not very like clean narrative. It's very like imbued with emotion, so that you don't get like just a here's what's going on kind of story. You get a lot of feelings and everything. The character is writing a letter to their aunt, I believe, the entire time. So you have these chunks of the letter put in there where they're telling the story of their life up to this point, and then you have like previous, but you find out it's only like a few weeks ago that's being told, and then you have the current time being told. There's like some magical realism in here. It was fascinating. It was kind of a little difficult to read at times in like the writing style difficult way because of the going back and forth between different things. It required me to be very actively focused, but I didn't mind that because the story itself was so very, very interesting. So definitely a yes for me on this one. And like, you want to read a crazy, fascinating story? We Are Green and Trembling. Worth it. Adult material, in case there are children watching. Next up, another classic, The Catcher in the Rye. There's a group of books. It's like The Catcher in the Rye, Catch-22, Fahrenheit 451, which I still haven't read. There's a couple others, but like they're grouped together in my mind somehow as kind of like, it's like a collection of classic books that I think boys are frequently encouraged to read, I guess is how they're grouped in my mind. I don't really know why. I found that fascinating. Does anybody else have that like grouping of certain books in your head that it's like these go together for some reason, but like it's not a real reason, because I didn't know what any of these books were about. So like I didn't know what Catch-22 was about when I went into it. I had no idea what Catcher in the Rye was about. I honestly kind of thought it was gonna be some sort of like dystopian future fantasy thing. I think because I associate it with Fahrenheit 451. It's really not. It's not at all. It was not at all what I expected. And I'll be honest, I liked it at the beginning, and then the more I was reading and the further I got through the story, the more I was like, I'm liking this less and less. By the end, I really didn't like it. It's very much a personal preference. I have read other books like this. I struggle with books that are about like apathetic, wealthy people, you know? Stories that are about extremely privileged people who are kind of apathetic to the world or don't care about the consequences of their actions, or who think like, woe is me, I have struggles, which isn't necessarily fair of this one. The character is like a privileged young boy, but also what he unfolds throughout the entire story is that there is a lot of trauma in the past for this character. There is a lot of stuff that has potentially or almost definitely messed with his mental health. And the way that he unfolds very slowly, because this is one where it's the character telling you their story, and he has a very interesting voice. Getting into the character's voice in this one it's interesting because he writes it like a young boy who doesn't necessarily have the greatest grammar or like is super well spoken. He repeats phrases constantly, like he has his catchphrases and he constantly repeats them. He interrupts himself all the time. So I did find that really fascinating. And then the way that he very slowly unfolds throughout the book what is in the past of this character, because you do at the beginning go like, oh, this is just some privileged little teenage boy who like needs to get a grip. And then you learn slowly throughout the whole book that like actually there's a lot more under the surface than what you think. But despite all that, I still like the longer it went was just like, I think I have trouble with stories, and this goes to like film and TV as well, where characters just keep making really dumb decisions. And I'm like, I know that's not like unrealistic or something. A lot of people keep making really dumb decisions in their life, but those kind of storylines very specifically for me, I'm always like, just make a decent choice for once in your life, please. Why? Stop doing that. It's kind of that cringe factor, but in a different way than people usually mean cringe. It's like the, just don't do that. You little Dumbo, don't do that. So this would probably fall in my middle category that I allow myself sometimes, where I'm like, yes-ish. Like, yes, but also I didn't super duper enjoy it. The next two I picked up very randomly at Barnes & Noble. I went to go get a puzzle, but then I looked at a table and I was like, you should get yourself a book. But it was like a buy one, get one 50 off table, and so I was like, do a random choice. So these are the two that I chose, based on their covers entirely. I knew nothing about either of these. I didn't know anything about the authors. I just grabbed them as I was checking out. Some of the clerk was like, ooh, I've heard good things about this. And I was like, I haven't. I haven't heard anything about it. This one is Bunny by Mona Awad, is probably how you say it. This book was a trip. It was insane from start to finish. And like my rating for it is a no, just because it really wasn't my style of story whatsoever. It's a no without me like whatsoever criticizing the book itself. It just was a no for me personally. I think it was well written. I think it was fascinating. I appreciate the book for what it was. It just wasn't really a story for me. But yeah, it was a crazy story. It was very interesting. I think if you like really crazy, wild stories, again, with adult material, then you might like this one. It just wasn't super duper for me. The other one, on the other hand, The Heartbeat Library by Laura Messina. I did not recognize this author's name at all when I bought it. I didn't know anything about them, but then I opened it and saw, also by the author, The Phone Booth at the Edge of the World, and I was like, that definitely was a book that got recommended to me a bunch when I asked y'all for recommendations. Now I definitely want to read Phone Booth at the Edge of the World because I loved this one. I read this on the plane to Brazil, literally the entire thing. It's pretty big print inside, so it wasn't like, it's not like as big as this seems like it is. It also, though, was one of those, not quite up to the same level, but almost at the same level as Demon Copperhead, that just immediately I was in her writing style and it flowed and everything. Set in Japan, like I said, despite she's Italian, good grammar. Despite the fact that the author is Italian, it says in her bio that she's lived in Japan for the last 15 years. So she wrote the entire story, like set in Japan, Japanese characters, all of that. And it is, the theme is grief, to put it simply. Like, you want to know what this story is about? It's about grief. And if you're like, oh, so it must be sad, I don't want to read it. It's sad. No, 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 no. It's not sad. It's just about grief. It's beautiful. It is absolutely beautifully written. Again, it's kind of non-linear. It jumps back and forth through different things. You get these little bits of stories from other people's perspectives that make sense in the end. You get a lot of different perspectives on grief and a lot of different grief-causing situations and how the reactions are to them. And it was so beautifully written. It was like a gentle hug. Big yes. Highly recommend The Heartbeat Library, and I really want to go get her other book now. Yeah, so we were getting to the end of my random collection of books on my dresser as I was about to leave for Brazil. So I pretty much just took the entire remaining stack, stuck it in my backpack, and was like, I'll read all of these while I'm in Brazil. And I did. The last thing that I had in that stack was a collection of Roman comedies, which I am currently reading. And then that is the end of my to-read pile, which means I can move on to a different to-read pile. The next group of books I have to read has like a little bit of a theme. You'll see a video on it eventually. But yeah, so this ended up being like this really weird collection. We have 2 PG Wodehouse books in here. I love these. They're so good. His writing is hilarious. It's just like a wild romp. They're funny, they're fun, they're lightly of the time. The wording, the frickin' wording, I want to use the term legged it so much more, as in ran. It's always like he legged it out of the room. The language is just a delight, especially if you like British wit. Again, a collection of plays by J.M. Barrie, the author of Peter Pan. Y'all, despite my knowledge of Peter Pan, like I absolutely love the story of Peter Pan. It's the play that I directed in college. I have obviously read the book multiple times. I kind of thought I had read the play as well until I read the play in here, and then I was like, oh crap, I don't think you've actually read the play. So realized reading this, especially from the info they put at the beginning, oh, there's a bookmark in here, that the play was actually written before the book, which I, for some reason, did not know, and he, like, altered it up multiple times before he even got to writing the book. And then there's some other plays by Barrie in here, and it's kind of hilarious. They comment on this, the person who's, like, doing commentary. He was writing plays like they were novels. Instead of, like, stage directions at the beginning where it gives you a general idea, like, the stage should look like this, so-and-so enters left and does this busy work. He writes his stage directions in, like, novel form. This is what would normally be stage directions. It's long, so I'm just going to read you a tiny bit of it. Act 3, Scene 1. A few minutes ago, the Comtesse de la Brie, however you say that, who has not recently been in England, was shown into the London home of the Shands. Though not sufficiently interested to express her surprise in words, she raised her eyebrows on finding herself in a charming room. She had presumed that the Shands' scheme of decoration would be as impossible as themselves. That's not how you write stage directions. Like, that is not at all how any playwright is, like, supposed to write the directions of a play. But he writes these whole chunks before you get into the dialogue that are just written exactly like he wrote Peter Pan the book. They're written like novels, and so it was kind of funny. Parable of the Sower. Nobody told me, like, the plot or anything, at least, but I was putting off reading this one because so many people kept being like, it's a tough read, it's a hard read, like, it's difficult stuff. Which, to be fair, it is. It is in theory. I read this so fast, and I loved it. I loved it as in, like, it was well written and it was a good story and stuff. So apparently people have been, like, buying this book like crazy, especially in 2025. The story is set in the future. When did she write this? Oh, 1993. I was assuming it was back in the 80s. It starts in, like, 2024, the story. So I was like, oh, no wonder people are buying it like crazy. It's now the year when this story was supposedly happening. Of course, people are gonna, like, have raised interest in this. And then especially last year when we had all of the fires in LA, because it takes place in California, sort of outside of LA. And spoiler alert, I guess, there's fire. Fire plays a role in this story quite a lot. So last year, when all of the fires were happening in LA, I saw a lot of people being like, oh, this book is hitting way too close to home. It's way too like predictive or whatever. Like, it's feeling very real right now. And when I bought this, actually, I got it at a used bookstore, and I was like, oh, I've been hearing things about that. Let me buy it. And the guy was like, oh, you're lucky. These things have been flying off the shelf right now. It's interesting that, like, when people write like dystopian future books, I feel like it used to be much further in the future. Like, people would set them like at least 100 years in the future. And it's like, as we've moved up through time, people have started setting dystopian future books a lot closer to their current time period. So interpret that how you will. That's pretty close. If she wrote this in 1993 and set it starting in 2024, 31 years in the future, that's really, really close to be writing a dystopian future book. Anyway, I just find that fascinating. But yeah, I think a lot of times with books like these, people very much call out what the author got right or predicted, or like how similar it feels to how things are. I always find it more fascinating to look at what they got wrong or didn't predict. Like, obviously the timing is not happening here. Yes, we had fires in LA, but not at all in the way that this was happening. Now, actually knowing that she wrote this in the 90s, that makes more sense, because like, this is not at all the focus of the story, and she very purposely makes sure that this is not the focus of the story. But stuff like technology, I found it fascinating that she mentions computers a few times as like a thing that people have in their homes. And I was thinking this was written in the 80s, and so I was like, oh wow, that's like really smart of her to have kind of assumed that by this future time period, we would have computers in the home. In the 90s, it makes a little more sense that she could predict that. But like, she very specifically never gives any details. Like, she clearly did not predict laptops and iPhones and stuff. Who would? But I found it fascinating the way that she was able to mention technological changes without making it a huge focus or something, so it doesn't draw you out of the story where you're like, oh, that's totally wrong and everything. Does that make sense? Because I think a lot of times in like dystopian futures and stuff, people want to like flesh out every detail and like exactly in what direction did all of these things go? How has technology advanced? How has transportation advanced? How has language advanced? And I like that she keeps this story very small and contained. Like, first of all, it's a first-person story, and it is basically journal entries, which, as I've mentioned, I love that kind of stuff. You know what's fascinating about this book? What is, if you've read it, you can give me your opinions on this, what is the inciting incident? Most books, at least like traditionally written stories, have an inciting incident, a thing that starts the story happening. It starts the action of the story. And usually that's going to happen in like the first chapter, because you have to be like, why are we reading this story? Why are we hearing about this? There's not really an inciting incident to this story, because if you want to say the inciting incident is when she has to leave the neighborhood, without me giving too much information on it, that happens like halfway through the book. The way that the book starts, it's like the very first thing is she's like, I had a dream, but it's not like the dream is the inciting incident. It's just like, I had a dream. It's like another dream. Here's what the dream was, but it's not like anything necessarily special. There's really no inciting incident. It doesn't even feel like the start of the book is like the time that the character sat down and started to journal. Although you could say maybe it's that. Like, this is just the day when she decided to sit down and start writing her thoughts out. But it actually feels more to me like you've just picked up a journal, and there's probably another one that she was writing for years before this, and it just so happens that this is the one that you picked up, and you started reading, and so this is where you're entering the story. And like, yes, of course, tons of stuff is happening the whole time, but there's not like a standout thing that you could really call the inciting incident, unless you want to say that the inciting incident happens halfway through the book when they finally leave. I don't know, I just found that fascinating with story structure, because like, that's not at all a bad thing. It's very enthralling, and you're in it right from the start, and like, it's well written and everything, without following a typical story structure. Anyway, this is one that, again, I could probably talk about for ages. Oh yeah, I was gonna say that like, the whole like, this is difficult thing. Like, it's a hard story. There's really tragic, disturbing things that happen in this story. But this is different. There's a difference here, first of all, between book versions and visual versions, whether film or TV. And then there's a difference between two different types of books. So if a movie or a TV show was made of this book, I would not be able to watch it. I can't watch fictionalized, disturbing material. It literally seeps into my brain. It starts playing on a loop. Like, I am very, very picky about what I see when it comes to movies and TV shows. I really can't handle anything. Straight up a wimp, and I'm fine with that. But I can read it. I can absolutely read it, and it really doesn't bother me at all. It does disturb me in the moment, but it's rare that it like has like a lasting thing. Like, in my brain, stuff plays on a loop. It's not like the same as like, oh, it gave me nightmares, because it's not when I'm sleeping, it's when I'm trying to go to sleep. It plays on a loop in my head, and it's very haunting and annoying. So then with books, I feel like there's two different kinds of books. And there's the kind where the author really wants you to be disturbed by something, or like wants you to feel the character's pain. If a character gets hurt, especially if it's like first person and that character gets hurt, the author is like really describing to you like the searing pain and how it made them nauseous. Like, they're really trying to get you to feel the character's pain and to realize how horrible it is. And then typically, as things escalate through a story, as worse things happen to this character, there is this escalation of the way that it's being written and the emotion, and like, they really want you to feel how the character is feeling. I don't prefer it, if you can't tell by the way I'm talking about it. Although, again, I don't want to, I'm not sitting here being like, that's not good or that's bad writing or something. It's not. It's just a different style. This style here, it's almost, this is going to make it sound negative, but a monotone. It's like the characters, or the author through the characters, tell you about these really horrible, disturbing things, whether it's pain that they're experiencing or stuff that they're witnessing. Like in this one, there's a lot of, I wouldn't even say death that they're witnessing. Let's just say what it is, dead bodies that they're witnessing. But instead of like the character being like, I saw this thing and it was absolutely hideous and let me describe to you every disgusting detail of it and blah, 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 or being like, I was hurt. Like, this pain plays a huge role in this. They go through a lot of pain, and instead of the character talking to you, telling you in the story, like, how incredibly painful it was and trying to describe to you the exact feeling, everything is just more of, I am telling you a thing. This is what happened, and I'm telling it to you. It was the worst pain I ever felt. Moving on. And so it's not as hard for me to read, because I'm like, yes, this is horribly disturbing, and it does still move you, but it's not trying to disgust me. It's not trying to pain me. It's very clear-headed, if that makes sense. It's very like level-headed. I am communicating to you these horrible things. And that's very much how this is written, especially because it's like the journal entries of the character, and the character herself is a very level-headed in control, not drawn by emotion. Not to say she never gets emotional. And so every time she's telling you, like, this is what we saw, this is what I experienced, this is what I felt, it's very much in the form of like, I am communicating this to you, I want you to understand it, I want you to grasp exactly what it was, but like, we gotta move on. There's more story. This happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. I don't know. I don't know if I'm explaining this right. Like, it's really, really well written, and I definitely prefer stories that are told in this way, especially when they have that really, that harder, more disturbing material in them. I prefer stories that are like, here's the horrible stuff. Here it is. I'm not gonna sit here and dwell on it and use like the 15 most descriptive adjectives that I can come up with so that you can really visualize exactly how disgusting it was. I think that's the thing, is it's not asking you to visualize this, because you shouldn't. You shouldn't have to. You should read this book and be disturbed by the story and moved by the story without having to actually visualize the extremely disturbing things that the character is seeing. And I think that's my thing, is when an author is writing like they really want you to visualize that really disgusting thing. I'm like, why? Why can't you tell me about the disgusting thing without making me have to create the actual image of it in my brain? Why do you want me to actually see that? And that's exactly the same reason that I can't do like the film or TV versions, because just by nature of the medium, they're gonna make you see that. And I'm like, I don't want to visualize it. If I create the image, or if somebody shows me the image of that thing, that is going to play on a loop in my brain all the time. I can feel the emotion of this, I can feel the despair, I can feel how hard it is, I can fully understand and grasp this story and the difficulties and the disturbingness of it without having to actually visualize every single little bit of the disgustingness and the horror, etc. Yeah? Anyway, woo, talked on that one for a while. Major yes, absolutely. Very well written. I should read the second one. Parable of the Talents is the follow-up story in this. I'm not gonna like run out and get it right now, but it's definitely on my like, hey, keep an eye out for that so you can read it. Last thing that I read here is a play. It's actually a musical. This is the script to a musical called Quilters. I won't say much about it. I thought it was going to be like this, oh, so cute little musical about quilting. Like, I grabbed it because it's Quilters and I sew, and like, of course. It was actually really, really good. It was very well written, and I could kind of visualize in a lot of the points the way that it would have been staged, which would have been very, very creative. Yeah, like, hey, if you're into theater and or sewing, quilting, read Quilters. Or if you ever see somebody is producing Quilters, if someone like, you know, if a local theater or something is doing the show, highly recommend going to see it. It was really well written, and it wasn't this like cutesy, well, you know, it wasn't watered down, I guess is what I should say. It wasn't like this cute little story about quilting. No, it was like a really good story about like the history of quilting, specifically in America, and very specifically in like the American Midwest, I would say, and the meaningfulness behind quilting and quilts. Cool, that's everything I read. I guess I did not need to write down my thoughts in order to have thoughts. I don't know how to end this now. That was my random selection of books. As always, feel free to give me book recommendations. Feel free to tell me whatever you're reading. I love hearing what people are reading or hearing, you know, recommendations, just because I think all of us are like secretly longing to talk more about the books that we're reading. It's one of those things that you kind of hold yourself back from talking about because you're like, ugh, people are going to be annoyed if I'm just like always talking about the books that I'm reading and the books that I love. But it's like, well, that's sad. We're excited about them. We loved them. We should talk about them more. So if you have a book that you want to talk about in the comments, feel free. Go for it.